All right. Well, over the last 2 or 3 months, I've seen some videos that basically talk about the price of parts. I mean, we've all felt this, and some of the maybe some of the nefarious decisions that manufacturers have been making. I'm not ready to. I'm definitely not ready to let the manufacturers off the hook. But the story's a little more complicated than just saying manufacturers are crooks.
Too many projects, not enough hands. Piles of parts stacked high on the land. Dreams running
All right,
wild.
to start this out, we got to talk a little bit about pricing. Corporate America is driven by profit and revenue. That makes sense, right? The problem is that corporate America's profit isn't the same as what you and I would call profit. In the corporate world, if you sell, let's say you sell a product for $7 and it costs you $5, so the difference is $2.50. In corporate America, the quote profit percentage is $2.50 divided by $7.50. That's 33%. Think about that. To you and me, profit would be I made $2.50. It cost me $5, so I made a 50% profit. To keep the confusion down, the corporate world uses the term margin. And so margin is the $2.50, the percentage, right? $2.50 divided by $7.50, that's 33%. The percent profit is the $2.50 divided by the $5. So that's 50%. The key point there is that the corporate world uses the revenue as the basis, and kind of everybody on the street, when you're talking about how much money did you make, it uses the cost as the basis. Doesn't sound like much, significant difference. So in one of the videos I saw, it was about the bushings, the cam bushings on a Harley-Davidson Sportster. And kind of the upshot is those bushings apparently cost $57 a piece. Now they're just little, I said brass, they're little bronze, like a Lincoln top hat, right? They're flanged bushing. Looked a whole lot like what I put in lawnmower pulleys. So I don't know this for a fact, but I would suspect they're the same bushing. Different size, but they're the same bushing. So this bushings shouldn't be, I mean, they should be less than $10, right? The cost of those bushings. So how do you get from, let's say, $6 to $57? Well, let's work through this. So I'm going to give you some numbers, and I did a spreadsheet. I'm gonna have to read the numbers, so I put the numbers to pennies, right? So I'm gonna read the numbers off here, and I'll put a picture of the spreadsheet. I'll flip it up here somewhere. So let's say that the bronze bushing cost the manufacturer $6 to make. The manufacturer is going to sell that to a distributor, and they got to make a profit, right? So they're going to sell it to the distributor for $10.50. The distributor is then going to sell it to an OEM, and they got to make a profit on this thing, and they're going to sell it to the OEM for $18.38. Then the OEM is going to sell it to a dealer, and the OEM has to make a profit. So the OEM is going to sell it to the dealer at $32.16. At that point, you or me walk into the Harley-Davidson dealership and we want to buy this bushing. Well, dealer's got to make a profit on it. So our price on that is $56.27. Holy smoke, I went from $6 to basically $57. Now, since I made the table, I can tell you exactly how I got there, right? So this table that I built has a margin percent of 43% for all 4 levels of that supply chain. So the manufacturer makes 43% margin, the distributor makes 43% margin, the OEM makes 43% margin, and the dealer makes 43% margin. And I can tell you from experience, 43% margin is not out of line for parts. Matter of fact, it's probably on the low side. The surprise is going to come in when I tell you what the profit percentage. So the margin was 43. The profit percentage at each stage is 75%. Here's the numbers for this thing. And you can see how the $6 cost with a 43% margin gives you the $10.50, and the profit dollars is $4.50. The next layer, they make $7.88 for the profit. The next is 13.78, and then at the last stage, the dealer makes $24.12. And you look at that and like, how is that right? Every step along the way, they make more profit. Well, that's because everything is managed on the percentage margin. That's just the way it works. In my experience, I've got the same margin all the way down. In my experience, the manufacturer is lower than that, and the dealer's higher. And it really involves the risk. So a manufacturer, they can sell their production capacity kind of to anybody, right? They don't have to make that specific bronze bushing. They can make other bronze bushings. So their risk of filling up their capacity is, in this group, is probably the lowest. The dealer, on the other hand, they have an area that their dealership covers, and that bushing only fits a Harley Davidson Sportster. So they have the highest risk in this scenario. So usually the margin percentage goes up as you go down this list. Last piece in this, this segment, the Sportster bushing, is that in the parts world, you've got two different types of parts. One is like a fan belt. You don't have to buy it back. You don't have to buy a fan belt from the OEM. You can go get it at Napa or any place like that. There are parts that the only place you can get them is from the OEM. Those are called captive parts. Those parts are expensive usually, because that's the only place you can get them, and everybody knows that. All right. The next video that I saw dealt with the inner door panel, right? The door card on a 2023 Silverado. Apparently, the door handle is made part of the card, and the door handle doesn't appear to be serviceable. So if you break the door handle, you've got to get the entire card. And apparently it's pretty expensive, like close to $400. So the question is, why isn't that door handle serviceable? Now, I'm not going to tell you I have any insight into GM's decision-making process. I'm just guessing, but I think it's a pretty good guess. First thing to note is car companies nowadays, they're assemblers. I mean, there is no comparison between Henry Ford's philosophy of, I'm going to grow rubber trees and I'm going to drive a car out the front door. Right? That top to bottom production really doesn't exist. The second thing is, I suspect, given General Motors' financial difficulties, ongoing, continuous, everlasting, I'm not sure what word to use there, but I highly suspect that they drive their engineering crew to prioritize cost cutting at every opportunity. If that's your job and that's what you get measured on, you're probably gonna do it, right? That's what I'm thinking anyway. So let's talk about the door handle for a bit. Historically, the door handle, and again, my brain works on old Chevy trucks, so the door handle is attached to the door itself. It's got some fasteners that hold it on, right? And it's rod and linkage, kind of multiple pieces. But you got to put the door handle on before you put the card on. So on the assembly line, think about it. You got to assemble the door. You got to put the door handle on. Then at some point, you got to put the the door card on, and get it all fastened down. If you compare that to what's on the pickup, it's one piece, right? So as near as I can tell, the door handle's on the card, the window up and down switch is on the card. It's complete. So think about on the assembly line, all you have to do is stick the card on there You have to connect the lever cable in the back, and I think all you got to do is plug in the wiring harness at the bottom. And everything else just snaps together. Seems to me there may be 2 screws where the door pull is, but any way you shake it, there's less operations in putting that integrated door card on than there was doing it the old way, where you had an operation somewhere that you had to put the door handle on, and then you got a separate operation where you put the door card on. So that kind of explains why they would move to an integrated door card. It doesn't quite answer, why is the lever not movable or not serviceable? Well, kind of the same reason, to be honest. It's all plastic, as near as I can tell. The whole door card is some plastic, and it's outsourced, right? GM doesn't make it. I'm pretty sure GM doesn't make it. They outsource that door card. So somebody puts together, GM made a contract with them. It was designed to be made as cheap as possible. And I think I don't have to tell you that if you snap plastic together, that's a lot cheaper and faster than trying to put any type of fasteners in. So again, while I haven't seen this door card, I would suspect when it went together, there's a lot of snapping. There's not much fastening. There may be some hot rivets where you melt plastic to make a rivet. I don't know. But everything tells me that door card is cheap to make. Again, driving costs down. That cost reduction in making the card matched with the cost reduction on the assembly line means that whole door card was probably a pretty good savings in terms of cost, or it saved a lot of dollars, right? The last piece on the door cards that probably is kind of under the table, but it's a real thing. So if you serviced all the parts that go into that door card, each one of those parts has a part number. You would have to inventory all of those part numbers. That is more storage locations than just inventorying one card where you have to inventory different colors. So the number of locations is reduced. I can almost guarantee that inventory the individual components costs more than inventorying just the capital, right? The individual parts would cost more than the assembly cost you, because you can make a deal on the assembly, and the individual parts, not so much usually. Sometimes you can. So their capital outlay for inventory is less. Their number of inventory locations is less. Their forecasting demand in terms of trying to forecast how many door cards I need, they just have to forecast colors, right? And they can they've been doing this long enough, they can forecast based on probably percentages. Whereas if you got all the parts, you're going to end up with some dead inventory. Some of the parts are not ever going to be replaced, so you're going to end up throwing them out. Some parts is going to break more sooner than you think it is. And I guess I forgot, the last thing is this whole door card is made of plastic. I suspect that in the background where the engineers are thinking about this, they probably couldn't tell me whether the door handle was going to break or whether the ears where the door handle was going to break. It's all plastic. It's all going to break at some point. So I could see them internally justifying that if we're going to make it all of plastic, it probably ought to be sold as a unit, not service any of them. I expect all you guys have played with plastic parts, trying to put a new plastic part in an old something, and the old something was brittle and it cracked. Maybe I'm the only one that's happened to. I don't know. But from that standpoint, replacing an old card, again, makes sense. So we've talked about the bushings and we've talked about the cards. And in the end, we really haven't talked about what I wanted the topic of the video would be, is why it's like that. What's the driver in the background? We haven't, at no point along the way did I talk about fair pricing. Did I talk about serviceability? I can tell you that, all the engineers I know and I've met, they think about serviceability, maintainability, but in the case of the car companies, I am fairly certain that cost cutting rises so high to the top of the pile that if the serviceability and maintainability does anything to affect the cost cutting, it gets thrown away, which is pretty much everything, right? I hate to say it, but it is. So the engineers are getting measured, they're getting their performance ratings, they're getting all that stuff based on their ability to cut cost on design. So they're going to do what their job is, right? So why, as you might guess, we need another story. In the 1970s, a guy named Milton Friedman came up with the concept. Now this, I'm paraphrasing, but he came up with the concept that the purpose of the corporation is to maximize shareholder value. Now this was a popular enough idea that in '76, they gave him the Nobel Prize in economics. And right after like early '80s, the MBAs, they grabbed hold of this mantra, with both hands. And today, I suspect that most of the business school students, they probably really believe that this concept was written on stone tablets and handed down through the millennia. In addition to all of that going on with the MBA side of the house, the 90s did something else. In the 1990s, the retirement IRAs, 401ks, all of that stuff, all the retirement funds, it really, really took off. So today, so that was in the 90s, today, 35 to 40% of US stocks are owned by those retirement dollars. Or everybody that has money in a retirement fund like that, as a group, they own 35 to 40% of the US stock market. We've kind of come full circle. So the drive of corporations to generate revenue, right, and profits, right, keep their margins up, keep the revenue growing, keep both of them growing actually, is really driven by more than we think it is. Right? It's easy to throw the corporate executives under the bus, right? They're trying to keep the stock price up, their bonuses, their salaries, you name it. But the truth of the matter is that if their stock doesn't go up, the people that have the retirement funds are not going to keep that stock in their fund because they will be penalized for it. If they have underperforming stocks in their fund, they're going to be penalized. Fundamentally, everybody that has money in an investment firm is going to be unhappy if that investment manager stays with underperforming stocks. So what's driving the situation we currently have in terms of continued push for revenue margin, right? It's a big vicious circle. And it's different than it has been in the past, right? Like I said, the 90s is when the retirement funds really took off. So you think about that, the last 25 years, everything has just been compounded in terms of what the drivers are. We used to be able to blame corporate executives because they just wanted more money, right? It's not that easy anymore. I've only scratched the surface of this big, nasty topic. But the bottom line is corporations are driven by revenue and margin. The only way that can be changed is if the market forces them to change. So in the case of, you and me, we don't buy their product, or we figure out some creative way such that we don't need to buy their part. Other than that, I don't know what the end game is. It's definitely more than just saying manufacturers are greedy and they're trying to screw us. There are so many forces to play here. Well, I hope you found this interesting. If you're interested in old trucks, go ahead and subscribe. That's mainly what we do around here. We're working on my dad's 57. It was completely submerged under 10 feet of water over a river flood. But we've got a 67 short wide bed that it was kind of my bucket list high school car. Didn't own it, but I'm trying to build both of those right now. Leave a comment, something interesting about this video. If you found something interesting about the video, go ahead and leave a comment. Leave a like, and until next time, I'm Random at RandomRodShop, and I'm out.